TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcasting to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praised a close, unparalleled alliance between the United States and Israel, yet insisted that no alliance would provide an alternative for Jerusalem's vital ability to defend itself by itself against any threat. Israel and Hamas have reportedly reached a truce arrangement in the framework of which the continued terror attacks from the Gaza Strip toward the southern communities of Israel by means of incendiary kites and balloons will cease immediately. U.S. Special Representative for Iran Brian Hook insists that the maximum economic pressure campaign against the Islamic Republic of Iran is bearing fruit. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hailed the growing international standing of the Jewish state among the nations of the world, a heartening reality that was reflected earlier this week during a historic trilateral security summit of Russia, the United States, and Israel in Jerusalem. In an address to the Israeli Air Force Pilots Course graduation ceremony, Prime Minister Netanyahu, who also serves as the country's defense minister, gave an example of Jerusalem's improved global standing. In contrast to the past, in which Israeli and Russian fighter jets battled each other in the skies of Egypt during the War of Attrition in the late 1960s, today the bilateral relations between the Russian Federation and the Jewish state have brought about mutual respect and efforts to assure deconfliction in the region, most notably in the skies of Israel's northern neighbor, Syria.
אני זוכר שעל גדות תעלת סואץ, אני זוכר ששם טייסינו נלחמו בטייסים רוסיים, אני זוכר כיצד הרוסים ירו לעבר מטוסינו. היום, במהלך למעלה מתריסר פגישות עם הנשיא פוטין, הבאנו לתיאום הדוק בין חילות האוויר של ישראל ורוסיה. וכדי למנוע תאונות, כדי למנוע התנגשויות מיותרות, הקמנו קו חם בין חיל האוויר של ישראל לבין חיל האוויר הרוסי. זה הבדל עצום ביחס למה שהיה בעבר. זהו שינוי דרמטי במעמדה של ישראל, ואני גאה שאנחנו מובילים אותו.
While Netanyahu welcomed the apparent shift, he also underscored a simple and obvious truth in which Israel's alliance with the United States will never be equal to any other diplomatic partnership.
אנחנו מברכים על היחסים הטובים עם רוסיה, אבל כמובן, ברור, שהברית המדינית, הצבאית, הכלכלית, הערכית, החשובה ביותר שלנו, שאין שני לה, שאין שנייה לברית הזאת, הברית הזאת היא עם ארצות הברית.
The Israeli leader went on to list a series of reasons for the unparalleled alliance between Washington and Jerusalem, which go well beyond the sectors of security, economy, and diplomacy. That said, notwithstanding Israel's everlasting gratitude for the unwavering support of the United States and its president, Donald Trump, Netanyahu emphasized that no alliance provided an alternative for Israel's vital ability to defend itself by itself against any threat.
הנשיא טראמפ הכיר לאחרונה בירושלים כבירת ישראל, העביר את שגרירות ארצות הברית אליה, הכיר בריבונותנו בגולן והטיל סנקציות נוקבות וחזקות על איראן שמכריזה על כוונתה להשמידנו. אין גבול להערכתנו ולתודתנו. ועם זאת, אני אומר כאן, בגמר קורס טייס, עם זאת אנחנו תמיד זוכרים שעלינו להיות ערוכים להגן על עצמנו בכוחות עצמנו מול כל איום. ידע כל מי שמאיים לתקוף אותנו שאנחנו נחושים להעביר את המערכה לשטחו ולגבות ממנו את מלוא המחיר במהלומות מוחצות.
With regard to the Bahrain Economic Workshop earlier this week, during which the U.S. administration unveiled the fiscal dimension of President Donald Trump's peace initiative to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Prime Minister Netanyahu underscored the imperative necessity for Israel to maintain a presence in areas of strategic importance. He stressed that while there are those who say that peace will not materialize unless Jerusalem hands over the Jordan Valley to the Palestinians, Israel's meager strategic depth cannot permit such a demand based on security considerations.
כל העומק האסטרטגי של מדינת ישראל הוא בערך מחצית מהרדיוס של כביש הטבעת שסובב את וושינגטון. אין לנו יותר מדי מרחבים. אין לנו יותר מדי מרחבים שמפרידים בין גבולות המדינה לבין האזורים המיושבים בצפיפות בתוכה. מכאן מתבקשות שתי מסקנות. הראשונה היא שהשליטה הביטחונית בשטח ממערב לירדן תמיד תהיה בידינו. לעולם, לעולם לא נפקיר את ביטחוננו ולא נמסור את השליטה לגורם זר. יש מי שאומר שאם לא נמסור את בקעת הירדן לא יהיה שלום, ואני אומר, אם נמסור את בקעת הירדן, נבטיח שתהיה מלחמה. לא נעשה זאת.
Meanwhile, in the West Bank city of Ramallah, Palestinian Authority Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh sought to diminish the initial impact of the American Peace Initiative in Bahrain, referring to it as merely an intellectual exercise that, according to him, has been fully and totally divorced from reality.
Bahrain was just simply a terrible exercise. I think it's an economic workshop that has been fully and totally divorced from reality. It seems the authors of this paper that has been presented there, they didn't link any of the projects, they didn't link the text, they didn't link the theme to realities. We haven't seen in the paper any reference to occupation, to settlements, to Palestine, to two states, to 67 borders, to Jerusalem, and so on and so forth. So this is just simply an intellectual exercise that I think it will not really materialize.
Shtayyeh, who heads President Mahmoud Abbas's government, also took the opportunity to warn of the growing economic distress across the territories that are under the control of the Palestinian Authority. According to the Palestinian Prime Minister, the current situation in which the Palestinian leadership lost a majority of funds received from both Israel and the United States after refusing to alter its behavior cannot be preserved and will most likely lead to a violent escalation.
Can we maintain this situation? I'm not sure about that. If the policeman has no petrol in his car, he will not be able to maintain law and order in the streets. And that is where the problem is. So the issue is whether we will be able to maintain the security situation. It's something, until now, everything is under control. I am not sure about tomorrow.
Now in other news, Israel and the Islamist Hamas organization have reportedly reached a truce arrangement in the framework of which the continued terror attacks from the Gaza Strip toward the southern communities of Israel by means of incendiary kites and balloons will cease immediately. In return, Jerusalem will once again expand the fishing zone off the enclave's Mediterranean coast to 50 nautical miles and would return 60 boats that the Israeli Navy has confiscated from fishermen due to smuggling-related offenses over the course of the years, and would also resume the supply of diesel to the Palestinian enclave. The reports, which were published on both Israeli and Palestinian media outlets, came just 1 week after Hamas political chief Ismail Haniyeh accused Israel of stalling the implementation of understandings that were reached by means of UN, Egyptian, and Qatari mediation, threatening the relative quiet of the Gaza and Israel frontier.
لأن التفاهمات التي أجريناها بهذه الوساطة الأممية والمصرية والقطرية، الاحتلال الإسرائيلي يتعامل معها ببطء، بتلكؤ، بعدم احترام لما يتم التفاهم بشأنه والاتفاق عليه من قبل الوسطاء الذين يتحركون في هذا الموضوع. لذلك أنا أقول بأن التفاهمات اليوم هي في مربع الخطر.
Since last week, Palestinian Islamists stepped up the launch of incendiary balloons toward Israel's southern territories, which devastated hundreds of dunams. According to an official statement by the fire and rescue authorities, more than 20 blazes broke out because of incendiary balloons yesterday alone, recording the number of fires to over 100 since the beginning of this week. It is important to know that while Israeli officials have not yet confirmed the reports regarding a new ceasefire understanding, a Hamas official told TV7 there was nothing new and that the development pertains to a follow-up of the previous understandings. Now, with regard to the standoff between Washington and Tehran, the Special U.S. representative for Iran, Brian Hook, insisted that the maximum economic pressure campaign against the Islamic Republic is bearing fruit.
We are dedicated to this policy of maximum economic pressure because it's working. It is denying the regime historic levels of revenue. Their proxies around the region are hurting financially. This has been documented by the New York Times and the Washington Post. Iran's proxies are weaker today because of our sanctions.
In a Paris interview with international news agency Reuters, Hook stressed that while differences remain about the course of action to limit Iran's malign activities with Washington's European partners, if the Ayatollah regime would accelerate its nuclear program, the West will be united in its response.
I think Chancellor Merkel, other European leaders, President Trump have all said that there will be consequences if Iran breaches the restrictions that it's currently under. Our sanctions do not give Iran the right to accelerate its nuclear program. The world's leading state sponsor of terrorism can never get near a nuclear weapon, and we need to push that boundary out as far as possible.
Meanwhile, in Brussels, newly appointed U.S. Acting Secretary of Defense Mark Esper insisted that the United States remains committed to its strategy of economic and diplomatic pressure against the Ayatollah regime. That said, he cautioned Iran not to mistake restraint for weakness.
Our goal is to bring Iran to the negotiating table to conclude a comprehensive, enduring deal that addresses Iran's nuclear program, its ballistic missile development and proliferation, its support for terrorism, and other malign activities. Our strategy is, at its core, an economic and diplomatic one. Again, we do not seek armed conflict with Iran, but we are ready to defend U.S. forces and interests in the region. No one should mistake restraint for weakness.
Thank you for watching us. Due to TV7's summer broadcast schedule, TV7 Israel News and Jerusalem studio will not air during the course of the next 4 weeks. We will resume our broadcast on the 29th of July. I and the team here in Jerusalem would like to thank all of our viewers and especially our partners for your dedicated monthly support, both financially and by keeping us and the peace of Jerusalem in your prayers. Keep praying for the peace of Israel and the peace of Jerusalem. I'm Jonathan Hessen, and I look forward to seeing you again on the 29th of July.
Hi, this is Maayan Hessen from TV7 Israel News. Like our videos? Support our cause? Enjoy learning more about the region? Want constant updates about the Middle East? Then subscribe to the TV7 Israel News YouTube channel. Make sure to also turn on the notification bell with just one simple click of a button. After subscribing to our channel, a bell icon will appear under every one of our videos. You will find the notification bell right next to the subscribe button, and all you have to do is click on the bell icon, and make sure small sound bars appear above it. This way, you'll be alerted every time we upload a new video, and thus will never miss a thing. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching.